Hello there. As you can see, I've fully assembled my Nuem faction for Relics. I'm going to go through each individual unit and tell you about any issues I had when assembling and how I feel about the general quality of the miniatures. First of all, we have these damage markers. Now, as you can see, these were incredibly difficult to assemble. That was a lie! They just come in one piece. You can put them on bases if you wish, but it's not really necessary. The only thing that needed doing was just going around the edges with a knife to make sure there weren't any little bits protruding. Nothing really, no real mould lines that I noticed on them. Next, before we get onto the actual units, let's have a look at the delicious orange dice, which is what inspired me to select this faction in the first place, the fact that they have orange dice, with their lovely little symbol on, replacing the number 6. Let's see how they roll, shall we? I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. That's somewhat average, slightly too many ones for my liking, but I'll let it slide for now. The first unit we're going to look at is the Henna Domine. I'm not actually going to tell you what they do in the game right now. I'm going to do that in a later video when I've painted them. I'm just going to tell you about the actual models themselves and the assembly for now. This one, it was quite simple, but not fast. The legs, for example, don't have real sockets to hold them in, so I decided to pin them rather than just superglue them on and hope for the best. I also put a small pin underneath this guy's feet, holding him there. Nothing too major. The rest of it is just straight superglued on there. One thing I do like about these models, there's not a lot of metal on metal action, because I find that even a slight vibration can disrupt the very sensitive superglue between two pieces of metal. But when it's metal on resin or metal on plastic, I find that it seems to absorb the shock a little bit better. That could just be my imagination, but that's how I find it. Anyway, look at this. This is a very nice model. Very disturbing. Looks like a very angry fetus with a mustache riding on a robot. I'm sure I'll find out exactly what it is when I go through the rulebook, and then I'll let you know in the next video. It comes in quite a few pieces. Obviously all the legs are separate, the arms here, and then the weapon heads are separate. This probably took the longest of all the models to assemble, but it wasn't overly difficult. Like I said though, just a bit of pinning on the legs possibly required. That's what I chose to do anyway. Next we have the Specialis Pueri. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing any of these correctly, and I do believe that the creator has said that he doesn't care how you pronounce it. He didn't particularly have a pronunciation in mind for a lot of them, as far as I'm aware. But this one was very easy, just one piece, straight down on the base. There's a large contacts area between the base and the model, with the back of the cloak there, so it sticks down very easily. Very simple indeed. And as far as the model, it appears to be a small child who is overly developed, let's say. So, yeah. Moving on. Next we have 3 penitentiums, they seem to be called. Now, the thing with these models, make sure that you're getting the new versions that have 1 chain per wrist. The old ones had 3 per wrist and they were all separate, so they're incredibly difficult to assemble. Whereas these are very, very easy indeed. This one here was just 1 piece, so that's very easy. Bend the chain a little to make it fit in any position you want. You could have it in front of him if you like. This one here just needed 1 arm attaching. This chain here needed to be attached separately, but that was quite simple. The one difficulty I had with these was the fact that there's such a small point of contact from the foot onto the base, but if you're using something to hold it down like green stuff while the super glue is drying, for example, it's not too much trouble. And if you look underneath the bases, I did pack in green stuff in there just to give it a bit more strength in the long term. This next one was also incredibly easy. In fact, this one, I would say this is how all metal miniatures should be, because this chain at the front here attaches in there, and the joint is so tight and snug, it's almost like it's pre-pinned. I would like all metal miniatures to be like that, instead of the usual flimsy stuff that we get. Another one with just a small point of contact with the base, so again, green stuff underneath. These two did have separate legs at the back as well, to give them this kind of running or stepping action, which is quite nice. Those are separate, but not too difficult to stick on. As far as mould lines, very, very slightly on the top of the head on this guy. Just really, really faint ones along the arms. They just came off immediately as soon as I took a very sharp knife to them. No trouble at all, really. Next we have the Metis Dedicatus. This is a nice one. It's quite easy to put together, although I did choose to pin the arms. If you can see, it's kind of like a ball joint under the shoulder there. I wasn't confident with the way it's positioned with the heavy part underneath. I felt like maybe a slight knock on it might cause it to come loose sometime in the future, so I just pinned those two arms just to be on the safe side. Wasn't too difficult. To drill into the metal I used a hobby tool with a 1mm drill bit instead of a pin vise, but that's only because my hands are so sensitive. You have a choice of masks for this model, and you can choose not to have a mask at all. The face is quite nice, but I've got enough of them without the masks already, so I thought this one looked cool with it. There are two bodies. There's another model quite similar to this, and people seem to use them the other way around, so that the one with the drills is kind of leaning forward running, but I decided to go the other way. I think this looks quite cool. It gives off quite kind of a Bioshock type vibe, doesn't it, this model? Most of it just one big piece, so another very easy one. And mould lines, there was virtually nothing on the resin, which is impressive to me. I do like some models without mould lines now and then. Any that there are, if they're there, they're very, very faint and they come off very easily. But for the most part, they're just not present at all. Unless I just have really bad eyesight and can't see them. Which is not the case. Next we have the Dedicatus, which is the same kind of model. This is basically the same as the previous one, except I've used different pieces on it and the body is in a different pose. You can see that leg there is metal. That's a separate piece. He's kind of running forwards. I wanted to make it look like he was doing some kind of bizarre dance move with the two big fists there. I don't know how well that worked, but like the other one, I pinned both the arms to be on the safe side. I'm not sure it's entirely necessary, but that's how I went with it. I left the face exposed on this one to help tell them apart further, and as you can see, they are quite disturbing little fellows, aren't they? Next we have the Auxilium Concursus. Now the one thing I wasn't sure about with these is which way round they're supposed to go. Because on the one hand it looks like that round ball there could be the eyeball, and then on the other hand this side looks like more of an evil face. So I'm not sure, but in the book it says they're supposed to spin round to unleash their fury anyway, so I don't suppose they really need to have a front. With these, the legs were much easier to put on than the earlier model I showed you with similar legs. These actually do have a little point that you can stick into the hole. Quite a lot of pieces. The legs are all separate, the arms, and then the weapon heads on the top of the arms. I don't think I did any pinning on these ones. They were all quite a snug fit, so I didn't deem it necessary. Next we have the Tormentor. This was the first one I put together. I do like this model. It looks quite nasty, doesn't it? Quite a few pieces again. The arms separate, the little shields on the end of the arms separate. The eyepiece there, you can give him a mask if you want, and there's a hole in it for the eyepiece to stick through, which is quite nice, but I like the face. Look at those teeth. The gun on top, separate. I didn't do any pinning on this one, although maybe I could have pinned the arms, but they seem to be quite solidly stuck. I didn't foresee too many issues with them, but if they ever fall off I'm sure I will pin them. Just didn't seem immediately necessary at this point. This might be my favourite model of the lot, actually. Very cool face. Next are the Auxilium Sagittarius, which are virtually the same as the similar models you saw earlier with the two arms, except obviously a little bit different. The legs go on just as easily, really. No real issues there. The only issue with these very thin legs is getting them to stick down to the base. But if you really wad some super glue down there, and then if you have some kind of basing where you can build it up around the bottom of the legs, like I've done with this sand, then that'll help even more. I'm sure some people use green stuff and have some kind of sculpted surface at the base, so the legs sitting in there would be fine. I wouldn't really recommend pinning because it's very, very thin at the end. So anything that just builds up around the bottom of the legs would be fine. And you've got 4 points of contact, so it's not like it's a huge deal. These went together very easily. The guns, lots of long, smooth surfaces there, so the only real mould lines were easy to remove on them. Just the usual, one pass with a sharp knife, and that was it, done. And finally, the Auxilium Medicae. These, of course, being a medical unit of some description. Syringes, saws. Just looking at these pieces, you'd think, they're a bit spindly, maybe there's a risk they might come off, since these pieces are separate from the arms. But it's quite a snug fit. I don't foresee there being any issues. And if there is a little bit of room to play with where they could be pinned. So if I have any issues, I'm sure I'd resort to that. I'm becoming something of a pinning maniac lately since I bought some 1mm wire. Because I used to use paper clips. But apparently paper clips are 0.8mm, and the smallest drill bit I had was 1mm, so they would move around a little bit, which didn't make it ideal. But since I got that wire, I've been pretty much pinning everything I can lay my hands on, especially metal. With the bases for these guys, some of them have a slot down the middle, which you're not going to fill because most of these models don't have any kind of tab. So what I did was I just put a piece of paper over it, cut out to the right shape, and then poured some extra runny super glue on it. You could probably use any kind of glue though. You can see underneath where the paper's stuck down, and then over the top of that I applied the sand, or whatever basing material you want to use. I've just found that paper is a really easy one to stick down over the crevices, just because it's paper, so it doesn't really cost you anything. All in all, I'm very pleased with my choice of faction so far. I'm really liking these models, looking forward to painting them. I just need to decide what colour to do them. Probably not going to be orange, even though that is my favourite. I like how dark they are in the artwork, so I may go for something similar. Anyway, next time you hear from me regarding these, they should all be painted, and then I'm going to go through them, tell you about that, and then describe exactly what they do in the game, I think. By then I should have a good idea. I'll have probably played a couple of games. All these models are, of course, available at the Tor Gaming website. I'll put a link in below. Anyway, I'll catch you next time, ladies and gentlemen. Toodaloo.